Right folks, we're here at the beautiful Weston Pools fishery, and this man, Kieran Marsden, is absolutely slaying them shallow. Now I've been stood here for a good 15-20 minutes and I reckon he's put 15 and 20 pound in the net in that time. He is bagging. Now this lake's called the Stretton Pool, a big head of F1s in here, a lot of crucians, a lot of eyed and an awful lot of big carp as well. And it's the F1s mainly that we've been seeing Kieran catch, because he's made an interesting tactical decision which I'll talk about in a little while. But let me just try and zoom in and show you where he's fishing. Now this is one of the very few lakes on this venue where you can actually reach across the cover. There's only a few of the pegs on Canal and a couple of the pegs here on Stretton where you're fishing up to the far bank. There's a lovely variety of fishing on here, a lot of open water pegs. But this peg, Kieran was very happy when he drew it because it got that cover. And he knew that if he did it right and fished a particular way up to that far bank cover, he'd get among some of the bigger F1s. And there we are, you can see how quick that bite came. He'd get among some of the bigger F1s and carp that live in here, and that's what he's done. Kieran, of course, needs no introduction. One of the most successful anglers here at Weston Pools of all time, I'm saying, and certainly over the last few years. Festival winner. Big mates, of course, with the reigning Fishermania champion, Christian Jones. Some would credit him with teaching him everything Christian knows. I don't know whether Christian would agree with that, but that's what me and Rob Swan have said in the past. Loose feeding 4mm pellets up to the far bank. And the key really to what Kieran's doing while we've been here has been alternating between different rigs. So at the minute he's got a little fixed dibber on there, and you can see he's just holding that on a fairly tight line and looking for bites. But while I've been here, as I said, he's caught a fish every chuck. He's alternated between rigs 4 or 5 times. Some jiggers, sort of 12 or 14 inch, some fixed rigs a little bit deeper than this. And this is, as I said, probably the 4th or 5th time we've seen him change. Now I spoke when I started about an interesting decision he'd made in terms of how he's fished this peg. Now a lot of people have come to this festival with gallons and gallons of casters with the thought of fishing caster shallow. The beauty of that being you catch everything. Weston's full of silvers, full of eyed, big skimmers. And the nice thing about a caster approach is, you know, you're giving yourself a chance of catching all them. But what Kieran's done today is he's left the casters in the fridge and he's gone with a pellet approach, feeding 4mm hard fishery pellets and fishing a hard fishery pellet on the hook. As you can see, he's catching F1s at quite a fast rate, and I'm thinking the fact that he's perhaps been a bit more tactical and left those casters behind means he's catching a bigger stamp fish than almost every other competitor that we've seen on this lake. And again, look, a tactical change, and this time it's a jigger. It's a jigger set about, looking at that, just wait till I can see where his stop is. Yeah, it's an 18 inch, he's just told me, 18 inch deep jigger rig, and I'm going to predict a fast bite on this, because this is what tends to happen on here. On every other time he's gone in, he's sort of, when he's changed rigs, he's not had to wait long. So I've zoomed in there for you folks, hope you can see that. And watch how he does it. He slaps it and then he holds the jigger right at the top of its range. So he's holding it as shallow as it can, then lowering down very slowly. And 2 or 3 times what's happened is, as he's got to the bottom of that range, as he's lowered it right to the bottom of its depth, he's gone for the first lift and the elastics come out. No such luck this time, but what he's doing then is very regularly lifting and dropping that bait, and you can imagine that wafting around, but more importantly, very regularly there's a tight line to that hook. So if a fish picks that pellet up, Kieran will be hooking it. It's as simple as that. Just that little flick. He's got the Matrix MTX5 pole there, and he's just using that to work the bait. Key thing, of course, though, here for him is he's got that cover. A lot of anglers today haven't, and that's why he fancied the peg so much this morning. I'm just going to zoom back out again give you some perspective of what he's doing. You can see the movement, just a little flick of the elbow, and there we are, another good stamp fish. This one looks a bit bigger, maybe slightly bigger F1. Don't know whether he's had any of the big Stretton carp yet, but I expect later on he'll be fancying a few of those up the edge. There's some really big fish in here. I took a photo as we walked on the lake of a chap round the other end landing one that looked in excess of £13, a great big mirror. Isn't the carp, it's one of the big F1s. As you can see, these fish are lively, folks. They do not like it up them. Good stamp F1. £2 on the clicker. I think he's been quite conservative there. Through that top kit, it's the Preston 13 Jura Holler. On the band, a fishery 4mm pellet. He has got some other coloured pellets there. I don't know if you can see them in that tub. He'll use them as a change bait. But it's a fishery 4mm, and that's what he's feeding. So for all you budget conscious anglers out there who are maybe put off by the idea of buying gallons of casters, both yesterday when Niall Evans won the match on pellets, and the way that Kieran Marsden's going today, it might be another match win on pellets. Just goes to show that casters aren't the be all and end all. Flicking the rig in again on that tight line. And see how he lowers it down, and I say a couple of times what's happened, he's just gone on that first flick up. Well, that one didn't take long either, but he's gone on that first flick up, and that's when the fish have hooked themselves. Don't know whether you saw on Facebook, we had a little poll earlier and Kieran was voted the second best angler here behind Chris Weeder. Don't know how he feels about that. A carp, that one. Yep. Little carp. Look at that, little mirror. This is the great thing about Weston Pools, a real 4mm pellet on the hook. And we're going to watch him catch one more, and we're going to head round and have a look at the other lakes. But it's day 2 of the festival, 34 anglers fishing, so we've spread them out over 3 lakes, which has meant they can have a rotation. Kieran, of course, won on the clay pit yesterday with £130. So he's come here on the canal for day 2, and he's off to an absolute flying start. From what I've seen, comfortably leading this lake. A flick, holding that line high, and then lowering it down, and then it's just a regular flick to keep that bait agitated, and there we have it, another F1 is hooked. Let's come out a bit for you. There we are. Just an absolute joy to watch. A machine. Kieran, I'm sure you'll be pleased to know, we've got a bit of an exclusive on here, but we've asked him to join us next year on a couple of our coaching events. He's going to become a feature on our coaching weekends. I felt his pedigree, his record over the last few years, he deserves it. One of the country's finest commercial anglers. In fact, you know what, we're going to watch him catch one more. 4mm pellet on the band. You see he's taken it out of the same pot he's feeding from, so that tells you he's matching the hatch with his feed. On other occasions it might be that he'd use a red or a white pellet on the hook. Today he's matching that hatch. Still on that 18-inch deep jigger. Loose feeding, fishery 4mm pellets. Out he goes. Just watch this action when he's out there, because this is the crux of the matter. Watch. Slapping the rig in and holding it at the highest point so the rig's as shallow as it can be, then following it down with the pole so you get a nice natural fall of the bait. Oh, and there was a fish on there, but it's actually come straight off. He'll repeat the process. He'll slap, hold it at the top of the range, start to follow it down with the pole tip to the bottom, and then it's just that little agitation of the bait, so it's always on a tight line. It's wafted and fluttering about. I think he might have bumped another fish then. Slapping again. Following it down, working it. And his loose feed is sporadic, so he's trying to always trick the fish into feeding. The problem with a feeding pattern sometimes is fish get used to it. So you don't really notice, but Kieran is loose feeding when his rig's not in the water, and if he has to, when it is. But quite often he's happy to sit there and work his bait knowing it's the only one there, so the fish have to eat it. And another good F1 comes to the net, folks. I think you've seen enough. I'm going to sign off for now. We'll bring you more a little bit later.